So hello, everyone. Welcome. Today we are summarizing some of what we heard across all the small group conversations, talking about some of COVES plans for the future, and also continuing those conversations in a bigger group where we might be able to share challenges and particularly strategies across institutions. So not just with other museums like yours. And so, as you may recall, we had 4 separate calls with the Art Bridges museums, the art museums, and then we broke the science museums into small, medium, and medium large along a somewhat arbitrary middle line to have those conversations. And from our notes at those meetings, we heard some big themes emerge around data collection, data use and reporting, and need for more resources. And I invite you to think about what you took away from those small conversations. If you want to drop that in the chat or share that in breakouts or at the end of our summary. So around data collection, across all of the conversations, we're hearing similar challenges and some really interesting strategies for overcoming those challenges. So as you all know, it is hard to continuously hire and train new data collectors. It can be challenging managing that data collection and reaching those targets, keeping data collectors bought into it, which goes along with the previous, and managing those data collector time and expectations from the data collector side and also from the institutional side. We heard some good strategies around sharing the recorded Zoom trainings, shadowing with experienced data collectors. One site talked about a full staff meeting that introduces everyone to COVES and really gets that buy-in from across the institution. Laminated copies of the COVES protocol that were shared with us that we can hopefully continue to share, writing COVES into those job responsibilities. So those were some of the things that we heard about data collection. We also heard a lot about data use and reporting, and so where we get the data from and what do we do.
Allison, do you want to share your slides right now, or do you want to?
Oh, that would be helpful. It's up on my screen. I'm gonna do that. Thank you, Alex.
No problem.
Wow, look, a beautiful slideshow that was carefully put together in some amount of time.
If you have a slide that you were just kind of recapping, you could go back just so we can see and follow along.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Here's my introduction slide. Here were the big pictures. What did you take away? Here's the data collection that I was just recapping. We can share these slides with you because I skipped over them and you didn't get to see them. Thank you, Alex. Moving on to data use and reporting. So we also had heard about challenges for data use and reporting. So how to use the data, maybe for applying for grants, making the best use of the dashboard, knowing what we can and can't do with dashboards, and making sure that we have given you all the right permissions. Talking about reporting templates and making that easier. Talking about how the challenge of learning how others are using the data to make institution decisions, and the challenge of making sure that everyone at your site knows what COVES can and can't do. This is some of the successful strategies we heard about. We're sharing data back with data collectors and visitor service, or sharing it regularly across the museum. The theme of share it, just get it out there and get people used to seeing it and used to using it, and really focusing on metrics that make sense for your work that you can use. But as I mentioned that we talked about resources a little bit, we're going to share our goals for the year. So new year, new COVES. What are we going to try to do? So the resources that you all shared with us in those calls, we put those together in a Dropbox folder where you can see them. So if you weren't on that call or you didn't save it when it was shared, go back and look at it. And I'll open up these links in a moment. We are going to try to start a newsletter. Our goal is a quarterly newsletter. We are excited about this as a way to share more effectively. So announcements where we can kind of keep everyone in the loop, or sharing the method to the madness. Why are questions on the survey? What do they mean? All that back end stuff. A place where we can help connect all of you by sharing things that from our members with what we can learn from each other, and tips and tricks. So just a way to just communicate with everyone just a little bit more cleanly. Also having a working COVES FAQ, and we're going to share a link with just the questions where we haven't like fleshed them out yet, but we want to make sure that they are useful, functional questions. And we're putting in writing, this is how we're committing to this, working on asynchronous training materials and COVES human subjects training. So real quick, are you seeing a browser instead of my presentation?
Now we see the Crystal Bridges audience report.
Excellent. So in the Dropbox link that, if Alex, you could share that. I don't know if you have or not.
Yes, just did. I've shared all the links so far, and then Ryan shared the FAQ list document. So
great.
They're all there.
So in this folder, Crystal Bridges very kindly shared their audience report, and oh yes, got it. Thank you, Dropbox. How they've reported back their very beautiful templates, but to see someone else how they're doing it, the Space Center Houston wrote up a protocol for their data collectors that they very kindly shared with us. That is a nice condensed reference. And Mia also very kindly shared some very nice evaluation reports and shows some examples of how they have used COVES data. So those were all shared on the calls, and they are now in this folder for COVES members to be able to reference and see. Thank you, Julie. Those are the yearly and monthly sharing strategies. We also have a link for the newsletter. We don't want to spam you with email if you don't want more emails, but this is also for you to share the COVES newsletter with. There might be someone who doesn't come to the calls or can't come to the calls, and it would be more useful to be connected through a newsletter. So we've just outlined the kind of things that we're hoping to share, and please sign up if you want this information. And for the COVES FAQ, we have drafted out questions that we tend to hear or we think are important to answer. And because this is supposed to be useful for you, really invite you to add to it. If there is a question, burning questions, we'll try to get to as many of them as we can as we flesh this out into actually having answers. So I'm going to pause there and ask you to share what you, sorry, computer, what you took away from the small group conversation, or if there is anything that stood out to any of you.
I'll just jump in because I already put this in the chat and break the silence. Because I attended all of them, I felt a lot of enthusiasm for the format of the call, just the opportunity to connect with others in a more conversational setting, and something that was more designed to kind of make those connections. And there were a lot of similarities, but it was mostly the idea that people appreciated the format. I hope that's true for many, if not all of you, because based on that feedback, I think we will try and do that more often, certainly again this year. So if you have a timing or questions that you want to chat with your colleagues about, do let us know so we can make sure to schedule those.
Is there anything more or less helpful about that as we think about ways to learn from each other?
I agree with what Ryan said, in that I thought that the smaller groups of like similarly sized or collections, so like collections working together was helpful, as opposed to like a larger group format. I would say if I could add anything to that kind of format, just additional transparency. Like I would love to know, like, what are the average amount of visitors that folks receive at MIA in January, versus where I'm at, so I could judge whether or not, hearing somebody say, oh, we got, 60 responses this month, and feeling whether or not I should feel good about that, bad about that. Like, I just feel like sometimes it's hard to compare without that kind of just specific metrics.
Thank you.
I wondered to that end, and I realize that this could spin out of control pretty quickly, but if there's, in the spirit of sort of centralized information, if there's like an organizational profile that might be useful for people to share or put together for each of the organizations involved in COVES. Like Minneapolis Institute of Art is a art museum that gets approximately, in normal times, 750,000 visitors a year. And the majority of our visitors are regional, and we have 200 employees. Like, if there are 4 questions that we could all answer in some way that might, at least on the surface, scanning a list, help someone say, oh, maybe I'll reach out to Rachel and Sloan because I can see that those organizations have something in common with mine. Again, I know that can get really big really quickly, so I think we'd have to pick like, what are the 4 or 5 things, but might be a useful sort of just like little bio.
Yeah, I think that is really interesting, and really, I can see that being really helpful for knowing, especially as we have expanded greatly from what COVES originally was, where maybe we all knew each other because there were 10 of us, and now there are just so many of knowing who's a similar size without like Googling everyone individually. That would be a pain.
I'll also say that I liked the smaller meetings too. I think the bigger meetings are definitely useful, but sometimes having these smaller meetings, it's a good thing to keep going. I really liked, hearing about how other people are reporting on COVES, because that's something that I'm trying to start doing right now. So the reports that were shared that we talked about a little earlier that are in the Dropbox are so helpful to me. And I wonder if maybe we could, if people are willing, make some sort of thing where, everybody maybe puts an example of their report in, and we can sort of get a full scope of how everybody's reporting. Like, I'm happy to do that once I get that going at SAM, share an example report. Yeah, I think that would be helpful maybe for everyone.
That would be great. And I think we have the permission set in the Dropbox folder that you should be able to add your own examples or resources that you want to share, or if not, email us and we will figure it out or put it up. One of the two. I think that's really great, because I think we definitely feel like we are not the only people who know what's going on or have good ideas. You all have amazing ideas, and sharing that is ideal. And hopefully we can continue to use that Dropbox folder to continue to share. Well, there aren't other thoughts at the moment. We want to suggest moving into some breakout rooms. So we grouped this roughly around those big themes we thought. So thinking about hiring and training data collectors, or just that data collection piece, and using or reporting data in the small conversations people are able to share across institutions like theirs, but we think that there's some useful value in sharing with everyone. So what are you doing in this area you think is working well? What are you struggling with? Then we have a choose your own adventure. What didn't we see? What didn't we get to talk about that we would have liked to talk about in those small conversations? That's kind of open, and we should be able to, you should be able to select the room that you want to go into if we open these up. You ready for that? Awesome. We're gonna open up rooms. Pick whatever works for you.
Allison, Ryan, and I will split up in them mostly to record, you know, the wonderful things you all say. When or not, if you ask not to, but you know, get the ideas down there.
Did I do it? Are the rooms open?
Don't think so.
I don't see them.
Very good.
It says breakout rooms in progress.
How do we get to the breakout rooms?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Well, you'd think that, you know, I'm just going to blame this not on myself, but on the Zoom update. Obviously, that's the problem.
Just I think Ryan's the one dropping the ball here. So
close all rooms. Okay, I just closed all the rooms. I'm going to open all rooms. If you're not seeing anything.
Nothing.
What?
Okay, I got it.
Oh, there we go.
Right. Sorry about that. It was clearly Zoom's fault, not mine. Nope.
So room 1, data collection, data collectors. Room 2, using reporting data. Room 3, choose your own adventure.
And Allison, do you want to pop those questions that we're supposed to be focusing on in the chat?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, how do I pick a room?
At the bottom of the screen, there should be a breakout rooms icon.
I see it. Thank you so much.
All right.
What time should we come back, Allison? Oh, wow. So we're still recording. Okay.
Well,
Right, so everyone's coming back. I think we should just go in order. So thank you. We had a wonderful conversation. It was all over the place, as you'd expect in the mystery room. But why don't we just go sequentially with room 1 doing a short report out, room 2, and then I'll go for room 3. And Alex and Allison, I think we can take lead on some of the notes that we heard.
yeah, so in talking about data collection, we talked about keeping consistency with overlapping data collectors, strategies around continuing to motivate or schedule and make sure that gets done throughout the time, and how we're training people. So I quickly read through my notes. Talked about setting targets or setting hours, or how to manage that actual week by week scheduling. I think that's everything, but anyone from my room want to jump in or add any thoughts? Great. Alex, your turn. What did you all talk about?
Sure, we had a great little conversation too. one thing I wanted to highlight, we talked about qualitative data and what we've done, if anything, with our qualitative data. Not a lot of us have really dug into it, but it seemed like some people were doing a little bit here and there. Talked about other tools to use for reporting, like Tableau or Google Data Studio. Sometimes just big question marks like, what is it? Could we do it? I don't know, it exists. Some of that data use we touched on briefly. And then two conversations that I thought were especially worth highlighting was one of them, we talked a little bit about how to use the Qualtrics dashboard as a reporting tool, and a couple different ways that people do that. One of which I'll just sort of share this information. If you're someone who's a little bit more familiar with your dashboard or kind of comfortable with it, you can make a private page on it and sort of tailor that page to look, the default view is pretty overwhelming. It's got like all your data. But if you ever want to create like a more pared down view for a particular department or person or something, there was some interest in that room, and I offered I'm happy to sit on a call for 30 minutes and walk through it with you together so you get comfortable with it. And then also kind of at the very end, we talked about changes month to month and what, does anyone see changes in their data? What is a meaningful change? The bathroom rating dropped by 0.2. Is that, who cares? Is that interesting? We're not sure. So we didn't have any answers in that conversation, but it's something I think about all the time. And so, although Kelsey, if you don't mind me sharing, NISI did see a dramatic change in their net promoter score when the museum flooded and they had to close half of it. So if you're wondering about how to make a dramatic change in your ratings, you could flood half your museum and that would probably do it. But I don't recommend doing that for a lot of other reasons. So just, some insights to share. I think that was all, unless anyone else wanted to jump in with anything I forgot.
So that's a great segue to ours, because we actually ended our conversation talking about what constitutes a meaningful change. And we did include, thinking about those open-ended responses to Net Promoter Score and OER to really unpack what's happening when you do see a change in the rare instance that you do. And we have some concrete examples. But first, I just want to direct everyone's attention to Rachel's comment in the chat, because it really is good advice when you're thinking about what are we looking for and where should we find it. Sometimes it's not in your full data set. You shouldn't just expect the Net Promoter Score to magically change, even if you're doing wonderful things. But perhaps it's with groups with kids, perhaps it's with out-of-towners or first-time visitors. So being able to use those filters on your dashboard or navigate your data set if you're doing independent analysis can be really valuable, and we're always here to assist with that. But it is kind of a subjective question, like what is meaningful? Is a statistically significant difference meaningful? And do we care? Because of what we're trying to see. And so the encouragement I gave to Lauren, basically because I didn't want to answer the question, was let's crowdsource this. Let's write a blog. Let's get other people to share what they think is meaningful and how they interpret it. Because I think there's a lot of right answers, and Rachel's got some great advice. And Lauren, you were spot on with asking that question in the first place as you consider organizational change and traction with your COVES data. And just before that, speaking of the qualitative data, we got into this, and Rachel, is it okay if I give your example? Great. So Rachel and Mia institute an exhibition-specific survey that is similar but not the same as COVES. So the methodology is a little bit different and some other aspects are different, but that all aside, there's a Net Promoter Score question. And during the run of this limited time exhibition, in the last week to 10 days, the Net Promoter Score plummeted because people were saying, I can't recommend this, I'm here in the last week. My friends aren't going to be able to come, right? So the literal phrasing of the question, how likely are you to recommend this, is very important. We talked about the genesis of NPS as a marketing style question from the Harvard Business School and ways to interpret it. And again, this idea that you can correlate or you can look at similarities and differences between the same visitor responding to NPS and OER to unpack those a little bit with the qualitative data. It can be kind of a painstaking process, but it's really insightful once you get down to it. What are the differences between those two questions? We also had a lot of really good questions as we were just exploring the world of COVES based on the folks in the room, some newer people to COVES and the data collection process and learning the dashboard. So we came up with some more frequently asked questions to respond to, which was great. For example, what counts as a submitted response? Can I submit the survey on behalf of the visitor if it's not finished? and things like that, right? So things that are kind of tried and true to the data collection model, but they're really good for us to discuss and make some decisions around. But overall, I love the format of the Choose Your Own Adventure Room because we talked about everything and had a good conversation.
I'm glad that that was an adventurous room. I think that's everything we have. Ryan, do you have a what's next?
I don't have a what's next. We have a time slot held in February, but we need to do some planning. We've got some new institutions joining this month, which is exciting. We're really excited to kind of reflect on 2022 through some data analysis, specifically for many of you art museum folks, the first full year of data collection. So there's a lot of stuff happening, but we'll be in touch about next steps and what you can expect from us. In addition to the slide that you shared with those resources, Allison. So I think for us, everyone should have access to the Dropbox link. Everyone should have access to the newsletter sign up form. And we do encourage you. In fact, we will, Allison, send an email to all of you so you can forward that on if there are other people you would like to sign up for the newsletter or give them the option to, knowing that we're not going to flood your inboxes, right? If anything, you're going to be like, where the heck is that newsletter? And you should also have access to the FAQ list to suggest things for us to respond to, either on your behalf so we can answer your questions, or if you've been getting them from your colleagues and you want a place to send them so you don't have to keep answering those questions. And other than that, we hope to see you next month. And it was a great conversation. I love it.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.